Arixmethes, my big tentacly boy. What a beautiful boy. So sleepy. So tentacly. And you know what else makes me a little sleepy and has tentacles? Today's secondary brew. Ofallon Knotty Pretzel. See, it kind of has like a... It's kind of like a wrapped tentacle. Arixmethes is a creature that reads. Arixmethes enters the battlefield with 5 slumber counters on it. As long as he has a slumber counter on it, he is a land. So we are playing the only land commander I can think of. Every time we cast a spell, we have the option to remove one of these slumber counters. Once he loses all of his slumber counters, he wakes up angry, and he is a big 12/12 tentacle monster. Today's accompanying brew, as mentioned before, is the Ofallon Knotty Pretzel beer. It has a 5.3% APV, a score of 84 out of 100 online, and is from Ofallon Brewery. Without further ado, let's go ahead and open this brew. Not gonna twist off actually, but you know, you always gotta pop it. Initial reaction, it's not bad. I was expecting, you know, a lot of salt flavor, and also like maybe like some hops or something to kind of make you like bread-like. But I'm getting a little bit of salt, but like not too much. And strangely, it's like a very like sweet taste. It's kind of reminding me like of the maple syrup one, but it's better. This is kind of more like maple syrup than the other one, honestly. I don't really, if you just gave this to me and told me what does it taste like, I wouldn't say pretzel. But I wouldn't say it's like bad either. So let's go ahead and get into Arixmethes. What does Arixmethes to do? Why did I build this stack? All these questions and more answered in this video. Arixmethes basically gives us a ramp package in the command zone. So we know that if we can ramp in to him, we automatically, the next turn, have 2 more mana. What this allows us to do is play spells and hold up mana better, which kind of allows us to be a little bit more of a control deck of counter spells. And also play things that are normally not played as much competitively because they cost too much. Furthermore, Arixmethes acts as a 1-card combo piece, which we'll get into later in our combos, that generates us infinite green mana. And also has a 12/12 body, which we build around in that one, we play spells that allow us to draw equal to our creature's power. And secondly, gives us a very awkward but potential backup win con where we can just swing 12/12s at our opponents until they die. This means if one opponent has like a particularly bad stacks piece stopping us, we can just focus them and put a lot of pressure on them. Same goes with decks that really care about their life. So getting into the deck more, Arixmethes is Simic colors, so we have green and blue. We know that we have to cast spells in order to get Arixmethes closer to being online. So despite us running a bunch of counter spells, and we kind of want to sit there at counter spells, every rotation might not have something we want to counter. So we also need to play a bunch of proactive counters, if you say, so stacks pieces. And also be very creature dense. Some notable ones are Collector Oof, who shuts down artifacts for our opponents and ourselves as well, but we don't take as much of a hit for it since we are primarily creature-based ramp, which also shuts down many win cons in the format. Along with Collector Oof, I'm also running Null Rod, which does the same thing, but it's an artifact. One of my favorite cards I run, which is a card most people don't know about, and then every time I play, people are like, that's actually really good, is Lalawan Cephalid Empress. What she says is that we return all blue creatures to our opponent's hands, and then our opponents can't play blue creature spells. What this means is they can't play Thrasius anymore if they're playing a Thrasius Grindy deck, but also they can't play Thassa's Oracle, which is one of the most threatening win cons in the format. So shutting down Thassa's Oracle is an amazing ability. Manglehorn is another one I play, which allows us to destroy an artifact when it enters the battlefield, which is always good to deal with any sort of artifacts that are shutting us down or shut down some of our opponent's ramp. But also it causes our opponent's artifacts to come into play tapped, which is relevant for a variety of combos as well. Runic Armasaur also allows us to interact when our opponents are trying to combo off by drawing us a card anytime they activate an activated ability of a creature. Wandering Archaic is another very good card in this deck, as we're able to ramp pretty fast, have a lot of mana, and cast it even with backup. It says whenever our opponent casts a spell, unless they pay 2, we get to copy that spell, meaning that counter wars are really hard for our opponents to win against us, as we can counter their counter spells unless they pay more for them. As well as if they're just casting tutors or other good abilities that we'd like to use as well, we just get that benefit, or we tax them. Ovenwall Tracker is another card that is a little bit of an interesting one to include in the list. It's one of those cards where if it comes out early, it's amazing, and if you draw it when you need a response, it's kind of sad. But what it allows us to do is pay 2 mana to have one of our creatures fight another target creature. In general, since we ramp fast, we have Arixmethes, and we play a couple other big creatures, we're always going to have a creature on board that's able to kill most other creatures in the format without dying. So it just gives us a repeatable kill spell to interact or to shut down somebody else's stack piece that we don't want to deal with. A big tenet of CDH and really Commander in general is that good commanders allow for some form of card draw. And that's really what holds Arixmethes back on paper. So I built the deck in a way that tries to remedy that. In general, since we're in blue, we can run good card draw effects like Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study, of course. But in green, there's actually some interesting cards that allow us to draw equal to our creature's power. These cards include Garruk, Primal Hunter, Rishkar's Expertise, Return of the Wild Speaker, and Prime Speaker Zagana. By casting these cards when Arixmethes is on 1 counter or less, we were able to remove the last counter of Arixmethes, and on resolution it will allow us to draw 12 cards, which is a huge payoff for getting Arixmethes online. Arixmethes runs a very untraditional combo most decks would never run, and that is the card Freed from the Real, and its more or less duplicate, slightly better version, Pimen's Aura. How these two enchantments work is that once Arixmethes is a creature, it still taps for blue-green. Pimen's Aura allows us to untap the enchanted creature for blue. What this means is that we can then tap Arixmethes generating blue-green, use the blue to untap him, and then repeat, generating us infinite green mana, which at first doesn't seem to do all too much, but when we combine it with everything else we've been talking about, allows us to win the game. Our two main win outlets are Thrasius as well as Walking Ballista, but there are numerous other ways that if we are drawing allow us to win the game, or to find these two cards. If we draw any of our green tutors like Green Sun Zenith that allow us to search for a creature card X or less, we can simply just find Thrasius and then activate Thrasius to draw our deck, finding Walking Ballista. Additionally, we have our green spells we've already talked about that allow us to draw 12 cards. Drawing 12 cards off of them should help us find either another 12 card draw, one of our tutors, or one of our win cons. If all else fails, this deck also runs another failsafe in this drawing storming process, in that we run a bunch of graveyard recursion spells. All of these spells basically are some form of the card regrowth, which just allows us to put a card from our graveyard into our hand, and then if we've already cast one of our card draw spells that are green, we can simply just put that back in our hand and recast it to draw another batch of cards. This process can technically fail, but since there are so many different options and lines you can go into, just look at your hand and think about what can I do with all this green mana. It's just kind of a little puzzle sometimes, but for the most part, you're always going to win if you can make infinite green mana and you have one of your beginning pieces. Now we're done with the first brew, let's go ahead and finish the second. Getting into our tier list, Arixmethes Slumbering Isle, a deck dear to my heart, gets the rating of Fringe. Arixmethes is a deck that allows us to do a lot of interesting Simic things that other decks aren't doing. Our commander being a land is really cool, and our combo is fun, and the storming off is fun. The main problem with Arixmethes is that it's kind of slow. Having to cast 5 spells after casting Arixmethes, which already takes hopefully only 2 turns, but sometimes 3. You're usually wanting to mulligan for a turn 2 Arixmethes if you can. Turn 1 Arixmethes is always really fun if you just get your Jewel Lotus. Once you cast him, you still have to get 5 more spells afterwards to get him online, and your combo piece. Given how fast some decks in the meta can go, Arixmethes can have a hard time threatening wins early, and it has to play the kind of police at the table, countering spells, interacting while the interaction we run. But that can sometimes just end up letting the second fastest person win. Where Arixmethes really thrives, though, is at a table where there's also a stacks player also shutting down the two other people, as Arixmethes isn't affected by almost any form of stacks. Since he's a land, they can't remove him either until we want him to be not a land, which means we have backup and we're ready to win. And having somebody else slow down the table allows us to really milk the card draw and ramp our deck provides us. When it comes to the Ofallon Knotty Pretzel beer, I'm going to also give it a rating of fringe. The reasons being that it's not really offensive to my tastes, but it doesn't taste like pretzel, and it's not particularly like interesting. It has like a relatively unique flavor profile, but it's not like making me go like, wow, I want this again or anything. It's just kind of like, I drank it, it was fine. I wouldn't buy it again, but if somebody handed it to me, I'd be like, I drink it, sure. And for that reason, it also gets the rating of fringe. If you made it this far through the video, thank you for staying around. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you can keep up with the rest of my deck techs. I'm going to try to post most Tuesdays is my plan. I may also start posting Sumeme bar brawls. You get a little sneak peek of that coming out because you watched all the far. Where I'm going to start uploading just me playing games on Discord and editing them down. If you love the little pea puffers that have been behind me the whole video, of course, also go check out and follow my Twitch Pea Puffer Live, and you can see them there relatively daily. Or watch the VODs of the daily, where you can just calm down, watch the pea puffers, and listen to relaxing music. And with that, thanks for everything. Sumeme out.